One of the most common terms that's thrown around in the off season by every esports pundit and every esports journalist ever is the word narrative. Everybody loves them. It's the story of players as they move from season to season. It's how you watched Fissure go from being a bench player on London Spitfire to tearing it up as a starter on Los Angeles Gladiators to being benched in the final series of Los Angeles against London. And it's a really captivating term, but it's overused in some ways. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about, well, more narratives, because I have fallen into the trap of using that word way more than it needs to be used. But going into season 2, there is a lot of stories that I think are being overlooked, that are being not expressed in ways that I think they ought to be expressed. And I just want to be the teller, the bringer of knowledge to the Overwatch fan base. And I want to bring up some narratives that I think are really actually going to play a huge role going later into the season among some of these mid-level teams that are going to be trying to make that final push into playoffs. I'm not talking about who's going to win the league. I'm not talking about who's going to be top 4 in the league. I'm talking about who are these mid-level teams and what are they going to do in order to make it into the playoffs. And I'm going to be focusing on some players that are pretty popular, I think, among the fan base and how they might futz into this kind of later season playoffs push. So going into season 2, I think one of the most interesting and possibly stupid roster moves I've seen was keeping both Taimu and AKM on the Dallas Fuel. I can only assume that Arrow and Jane have a plan for both of these people, but it's really hard to see what that is. Going in from season 1, we know that Taimu and AKM are both hit scan players. They play Widowmaker, they play McCree, they play Soldier. Pretty cut and dry. Taimu's better on Widow, AKM's better on Soldier, but they don't really have much of an extensive hero pool either way. We know that Dallas is going to be using Zachary and Effect as their main DPS lineup, which makes complete sense. They're both flexible and highly talented players. But Taimu and AKM are both solid backups, but the thing is you don't need both of them, right? They both have the same hero pool. They both play the same way, so why do you have both? Why are you keeping one on the bench? The cynic in me says that they wanted to keep AKM, but they had to keep Taimu in order to keep the fans appeased. And well, that's a decent story, but I don't know. Like, how do you plan for this? The thing is, the only way I see this end up turning out is mid-season, Taimu and AKM just aren't able to work together as professionals, and they're both hot-headed. They're both players that really do want to play. Like, they want to be put in. I don't see either of them being happy sitting on the bench, but at least if there's only one of them on the bench, they know that they'll get more opportunities to play. Though they know that if Zachary has to sit out, they're going in. But with both of them, it's hard. Like, and there's arguments on both sides. I mean, Taimu is the Envious player. He was the carry through Apex Season 1, where Envious was able to win the championships. AKM was on Rogue. He was an amazing player. Before Overwatch League, he was an okay player in Overwatch League. He got picked up mid-season and was able to do a little bit of work. But the thing is, like, who would you keep? And I think the problem that Dallas Fuel has is that both Taimu and AKM are OWL level DPS, but there's no teams for them to go to if they get cut. What team's going to pick up AKM? What team's going to pick up Taimu? Either way, the only way I see this ending is mid-season, one of them gets cut. Probably AKM, because Dallas wants to keep Taimu for the streaming and marketing potential, but there's no good option here. Really, this Band-Aid should have been ripped off before the season began, and it's just going to end up being ripped off mid-season. Unless one of them radically changes their hero pool, or one of them becomes super good at the game, star level talent, then it becomes obvious you cut the opposite. If AKM becomes a god, you cut Taimu. If Taimu becomes a god, you cut AKM. That just makes the decision easy. Until then, we basically just see two OWL players sitting on a bench doing nothing. Both players that want to play, they want to be in there, they want to be able to tear it up, but I don't see that sitting well with either of them. Secondly, let's move on to Logix, formerly of Florida Mayhem, now currently playing in Contenders. He's a sad story. It's a very sad story. He went from a star level DPS in Florida, where he was tearing it up, doing excellent work on the Tracer, but he was on a really bad team, a team full of washed up Swedish players that nobody cared about, and he wasn't able to convert into wins. And so midway through the season, Florida realizes that they have to do something. They got to take drastic measures if they want to make it into playoffs. Well, maybe not even make it into playoffs, just win some fucking games. And so they bring in Saya Player, who coincidentally fills pretty much the same role as Logix. He's now put into a Taimu AKM situation, and albeit at a much higher level than either Taimu or AKM. And he's competing for his starting spot with the brand new Korean hotness. And while Saya Player is an absolutely insane Widowmaker, probably the best one in the league, he's not able to convert into wins. He's not able to carry enough team fights for Florida to actually win games. And so you put Logix back in, they start winning more. But he still gets cut at the end of the season because guess what? Florida now wants to build a Korean roster. And to add insult to injury, they keep his former DPS duo Tavik, who is quite frankly very washed up at this point, not an Overwatch League level player. But Florida apparently has more faith in him than Logix. So there it is. That's super unlucky. Logix is genuinely a star level talent in the Overwatch League, and the fact that he did not get picked up by anyone, like the Washington Justice, for example, is kind of a travesty. And it kind of shows how broken the professional scene can be and how politics can lead to excellent players being left out. And so my prediction for Logix is that he's going to keep tearing it up in Contenders. I mean, mid-season, someone's going to find out that their DPS aren't cutting it. Someone's going to find out that if they want to make playoffs, they need to bring in someone who is a star. And they're going to need to pull in someone who actually is good at the game. My guess is that it's Los Angeles Valiant, but it could be any number of teams. It could be Washington Justice. It could end up being Boston. It could end up being a hell of a lot of people. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see who's in that middle of the pack who still has an opportunity to hit playoffs but needs drastic changes in order to do so. Snillo was a player from Season 1 who was on the Philadelphia Fusion. He was a rookie coming from... Well, in the sense that everybody in Overwatch Season 1 was a rookie. He had come from European contenders, and he was a very good player. He was an excellent tracer, but unfortunately he was on a team with EQO and Carpe. So you really don't replace either of them in that situation. They're both top-level DPS players, easily the second best duo in the league. You can't replace either of them. They're absolutely franchise players. So in Season 2, he's now been given a two-way contract to play for Fusion University while still being able to sub in for Philadelphia if they need a ringer. But unfortunately, they're not going to need a ringer unless Carpe literally gets hit by a bus and needs to go to the hospital for a whole stage. Snillo will never play on the main team. He's going to be in Contenders, which is really unfortunate because Snillo is a talent that's still developing. He still has a ways to go to reach his peak, and he's absolutely the kind of player that I think has the potential to be a star level DPS. He already showed very good strengths in Season 1. And it's just another case of there's too many DPS in Overwatch. There's too many players who are super good at that role and could be star level talent at Overwatch League, but are stuck in Contenders because there's already a bunch in Overwatch League. So Snillo's going to stay in Contenders for the rest of the season, and a burgeoning DPS talent who could be a star is now sitting doing nothing in Overwatch League. It's a really sad day. It's a sad day for people who love Overwatch. Boston Uprising is a team that, of course, made waves in the offseason, and not in a good way. They were very much at the center of a controversy regarding how they were paying their players, how they were treating their players in terms of their living condition. But going into season 2, they've made some interesting roster moves, and they traded Stryker off of the team, who reportedly had a lot of issues with Huck and wasn't able to work with him at all, thought he was being treated very unfairly. But they did decide to keep Gamsu as their main tank. The really awkward thing is that they also got Axiom and Fusions as main tank players. Of course, Fusions has been signed to a 2-way contract so he can play in contenders while not ostensibly not playing on the main team. But we still are left with Axiom and Gamsu on that roster fighting for a starting position when both of them are starting level main tanks. They're both actually super good. Of course, Gamsu has struggled on the Reinhardt, and going into season 2, we look to be going into a Reinhardt meta, which is problematic for Gamsu. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Axiom start, but regardless, I don't think we're going to be on Reinhardt the entirety of season 2. And when Winston becomes meta again, or hell, even Hammond becomes meta, who are you going to put in? Who do you put in, Axiom or Gamsu? And that's going to be that's an awkward point because both of them are starting level players. And main tank is a role that you don't swap out. You can swap out DPS for strategic reasons. You don't really swap out your main tank ever for any kind of strategic reason. So Boston being a team that's very reliant on scouting out low tier players so that they can more or less not pay them much. I don't see Gamsu being very happy on this team after season 2. I think, especially mid-season, Boston is going to be looking to shop Gamsu to another team. And I think it's actually very likely we see Gamsu transferring into Vancouver or Shanghai, or even potentially Houston. These are all teams that I think will be in that middle pack where they'll be able to make playoffs in the wildcard tournament, but they're not going to be solidly in a playoffs position. They're going to have to fight for it. So it would make a lot of sense to me for Boston to sell a player like Gamsu, who was proven in Season 1 to be a super strong main tank, genuinely one of the better Winstons in the league, who will probably get a high buyout. I could see a team like Vancouver or Shanghai or Houston shelling out a lot of cash to get a top-tier main tank like that. Either way, I would not expect to see Gamsu on Boston going into Season 3. I think Axiom will be the starting main tank by the end of Season 2, and I think Fusions will be brought up to the main team. Then again, Boston has been a team that's very hard to predict. They've done some interesting things, and they've had some unfortunate events, but that's the way I see it going into Season 3. Just want to thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, you can continue to subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Have a great day.